The sun had barely risen over the quiet town when a young girl named Amara found herself standing on the edge of the street, clutching a worn-out bag with trembling hands. The air was cold, her breath visible as she whispered softly, "Why, Father?" Her voice cracked, her heart aching as she looked back at the only home she had ever known. Just hours earlier, her adoptive father, Mr. Faisal Khan, had told her to leave, with no explanation, no mercy, and no hint of the love he once showed. Amara had grown up believing she was the luckiest girl in the world. Though she was adopted, Mr. Khan always treated her as his own. He provided her with the best education, the most beautiful clothes, and the kind of affection that made her forget she wasn't his biological daughter. For years, she believed that love was unconditional, until that one fateful night. It was during dinner, a normal evening filled with laughter and warmth. Then, suddenly, Mr. Khan's mood changed. His eyes grew cold, his voice harsh. "Pack your things," he said, his tone final. "You're leaving this house tonight." Amara froze. She thought she misheard. She begged him to explain, but he only turned away, his face blank with pain. Or was it guilt? Tears streamed down her face as she packed her few belongings. The woman who had once called herself her mother stood silently by the door, eyes full of sorrow but lips sealed. Not a word of comfort escaped her. It was as if a spell had been cast on the house, the kind that erased love and replaced it with silence. Out in the cold night, Amara walked for hours. The city lights blurred through her tears. She had no one, no family, no money, no idea why she had been cast away. Yet, deep inside, she felt something was wrong. Mr. Khan had always been a man of reason, a man of kindness. Something didn't fit. Days turned into weeks. Amara struggled to survive. She found temporary shelter in a small mosque's women's section, where kind strangers offered her food. There, she met Nadia, a woman in her 30s who worked as a teacher. Nadia saw something special in Amara, her quiet resilience, her refusal to give up despite her pain. She gave Amara a place to stay and encouraged her to start fresh. Amara began working small jobs, cleaning, teaching children basic English, even selling handmade crafts in the market. Slowly, she started rebuilding her life, piece by piece. But every night before she slept, she would still whisper, "Why did you do this to me, Father?" One evening, while returning from work, she noticed a group of men distributing food to the poor. Among them was a familiar logo, Khan Enterprises. Her heart skipped a beat. It was her father's company. She hadn't heard that name in months, but it still carried the weight of love and betrayal. She watched from afar as the volunteers worked, her emotions colliding like waves in a storm. In the weeks that followed, rumors spread through the city. People whispered about Mr. Khan's sudden disappearance from the public eye. Some said he had fallen ill. Others claimed he was hiding from powerful enemies. Amara tried not to care, but her heart refused to let go. One morning, Nadia handed her a newspaper. The headline made her hands tremble. Billionaire Faisal Khan hospitalized. Company faces internal crisis. Amara's chest tightened. She didn't know whether to cry or feel angry. She wanted to see him, to demand answers. But she was afraid. What if he rejected her again? That night, she made a decision. She took a small bus to the city hospital. The grand building felt intimidating, filled with polished floors and silent corridors. When she reached the reception, the nurse asked, "Are you family?" Amara hesitated before whispering, "I'm his daughter." The nurse looked at her curiously but allowed her through. When she entered the private room, the sight before her made her freeze. Mr. Khan lay weak on the bed, pale and thinner than she remembered. The strong man who once commanded boardrooms now looked fragile, broken. His eyes opened slowly, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, tears welled up in his eyes as he whispered her name, Amara. She couldn't hold back any more. "Why did you do that to me?" she cried, her voice trembling. "Why did you throw me away when I needed you most?" Mr. Khan turned his face away, guilt shadowing his expression. I didn't want to, he said weakly. But they threatened you. They threatened your life. Amara's breath caught. Who did? She asked. He sighed deeply. People from the company. I made enemies. Dangerous ones. They found out about you. They said if I didn't remove you from my life, they would harm you. So I pretended to hate you. It was the only way I could protect you. Her heart shattered anew, but this time, it was not from pain, it was from understanding. The pieces of the puzzle finally made sense. His coldness, his silence, his forced anger, all were masks for love. Tears streamed down both their faces as he reached for her hand. I watched you from afar, he said softly. Every step you took, every job you did, I knew. I made sure you were safe. I just couldn't tell you. Amara felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. The man she once thought had abandoned her had actually been her silent guardian all along. Weeks passed as Mr. Khan recovered. During that time, Amara stayed by his side, reading to him, cooking for him, and helping him rebuild his strength. Slowly, they rebuilt their bond, stronger, more honest, and more precious than before. Then came another surprise. One day, a lawyer arrived with documents. Mr. Khan smiled weakly and said, "You deserve to know the truth, Amara. You are not just my adopted daughter, you are my only heir." Amara was stunned. What do you mean? He explained that before adopting her, he had lost his biological daughter in an accident. But unknown to him, the orphanage had mixed records. Amara was that very child. She wasn't adopted after all. She was his real daughter, separated by tragedy and fate, reunited by destiny. The revelation left Amara speechless. All those years of confusion, pain, and questions melted into tears of joy. The father she thought had abandoned her had actually been her blood all along. As Mr. Khan's health improved, he officially named her the new CEO of Khan Enterprises. The news spread like wildfire. The billionaire's lost daughter returns. The same people who once pitied her now bowed their heads in respect. Yet, Amara never let the power change her heart. She remained humble, using her wealth to help orphans and girls who suffered abandonment, just as she once had. Years later, at a charity event, a reporter asked her, "What's the most important lesson life has taught you?" She smiled gently and said, "That sometimes, the people who seem to hurt you the most are the ones protecting you in silence. Love doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it hides behind sacrifice." The audience fell silent, moved by her words. After the event, she stood by the balcony, looking up at the stars, the same stars she had once cried under when she was homeless. This time, she smiled. Her journey had come full circle. She wasn't just a girl who was kicked out. She was a girl who found her worth, her truth, and her father's love again. And somewhere, deep in her heart, she knew that no wealth could ever compare to the richness of forgiveness and love. Her story wasn't about money. It was about faith, pain, and redemption. It was a story that reminded everyone watching that sometimes, the darkest nights bring forth the brightest dawns. The wind howled across the narrow street as Amara Khan stood barefoot on the cold pavement. The faint light from the mansion windows flickered behind her, casting her shadow long and fragile. She hugged her small bag tightly, everything she owned in that one worn-out sack. The pain in her chest wasn't from the cold, but from the words that had just been thrown at her. "Leave this house. Tonight." Those 6 words had shattered her world. Amara's voice trembled when she had tried to ask, "But why, Father?" But the man she called father didn't even look her way. His eyes, usually warm and full of wisdom, were cold and distant, like she was a stranger. Inside the Grand Khan mansion, silence filled the air after she left. The servants whispered, confused and frightened. The woman who had once been like a mother to Amara stood frozen at the staircase, tears in her eyes, unable to move. Amara had been adopted at the age of 5. Mr. Faisal Khan, a respected businessman known for his generosity, had brought her home from an orphanage after losing his wife's child in a car accident. Since then, Amara had become the heart of the family, cheerful, kind, and bright. She was loved by everyone. Or so she thought. As she walked under the dim streetlights, memories flooded her mind. Her father teaching her to ride a bicycle, reading her bedtime stories, celebrating her school awards. Everything had seemed so perfect. What could have gone so terribly wrong? The next morning, she woke up on a park bench. Her stomach growled with hunger. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She looked up at the rising sun and whispered, "Maybe I was never meant to belong." Days passed. Amara wandered from place to place. No one knew her, no one cared. She tried to find work, but with no references or ID, no one wanted to hire her. Her soft hands, once used to holding books, were now rough from washing dishes and cleaning floors. One afternoon, she fainted near a small shop. A kind woman named Nadia saw her and rushed to help. Nadia took her home, fed her warm food, and gave her a place to sleep. "You can stay here until you get back on your feet," she said kindly. Amara could barely speak from gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't have anyone anymore." Nadia smiled softly. "You have Allah. And now, you have me." Under Nadia's care, Amara started to heal slowly. She found work teaching small children at a local school. Her gentle nature and intelligence won the hearts of everyone around her. She began to laugh again, though a quiet sadness still lingered behind her smile. One day, while walking home, she passed by a group of men unloading food parcels from trucks. The logo on the truck made her stop in her tracks. It read Khan Enterprises, serving humanity. Her father's company. Her hands trembled. It had been nearly 2 years since that night, yet the name still cut deep into her heart. She stood there, frozen, watching as the volunteers handed out meals. She wanted to run, but something made her stay. That night, memories haunted her dreams. She saw her father's face, cold, distant, yet full of something she couldn't quite name. Fear, regret, love. Weeks turned into months. Then one morning, as she was preparing lessons for her students, Nadia came running in with a newspaper. "Amara, look," she said breathlessly. The headline read, "Business tycoon Faisal Khan in critical condition. Company facing takeover threats." The paper slipped from Amara's hands. Her heart raced. Despite everything he had done, the thought of losing him was unbearable. Against her own logic, she whispered, "I have to see him." That evening, she stood outside the massive city hospital, her heart pounding. The security guards eyed her suspiciously as she approached the reception. "Who are you?" the nurse asked. Amara hesitated, then quietly said, "I'm his daughter." After a long pause, the nurse nodded. "He's been asking for his daughter for days. Room 507. Her eyes widened. "He asked for me." When she entered the room, time seemed to stop. Mr. Khan lay weak and pale on the bed, his oxygen mask covering half his face. Tubes surrounded him, but when he saw her, his eyes lit up, the first light in his tired gaze. "Amara," he whispered, voice hoarse. She stood frozen, tears welling up. "Why did you do that to me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why did you throw me away?" Mr. Khan turned away, tears escaping his eyes. "I didn't want to," he murmured. "They made me." "Who?" she demanded. He took a deep breath. "People who wanted my empire. They threatened to hurt you. They said if I didn't send you away, you would die. I couldn't risk it, Amara. I thought keeping you far from me was the only way to keep you safe." Amara's body trembled. "You could have told me." "I couldn't," he whispered. "They were watching everything. I had to make you believe I hated you, so they would leave you alone." The truth hit her like a storm. Every cruel word, every cold glance, it was all to protect her. She broke down beside his bed, holding his hand. "I would have stayed even if it meant danger," she sobbed. "You didn't have to suffer alone." He smiled weakly. You've always been strong. Stronger than me. Days passed, and Amara refused to leave his side. She helped the nurses, cooked his meals, read him the Quran at night. Slowly, the man who once pushed her away began to heal. One day, as the sun set behind the hospital window, he called her close. Amara, he said softly, there's something I need to tell you before it's too late. Her eyes filled with worry. Don't say that, Father. You'll be fine. He smiled faintly. You are not my adopted daughter. You are my real daughter. Amara froze. What do you mean? He explained that years ago, when his wife and child were in a car accident, the hospital mistakenly told him his baby had died. In his grief, he went to the orphanage to donate in her memory, and that's where he found Amara. The documents were mixed up. The child he adopted was his very own daughter. The truth left her stunned. So all this time, I was really yours. He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. Yes, my blood, my everything. Amara couldn't hold back her emotions. She fell into his arms, sobbing. I missed you every day, she said. I missed you more, he whispered. After months of recovery, Mr. Khan returned home, but this time, not as the same powerful businessman. He was a changed man, humbler, gentler. The first thing he did was hold a press conference to announce his daughter's return. The world was stunned. Reporters called it the miracle reunion. The headlines read, billionaire's lost daughter returns to lead the Khan empire. Amara was now the official heir to Khan Enterprises. But unlike others who inherited wealth, she didn't chase luxury. She opened orphanages, funded schools, and provided scholarships for girls who had no one to support them. In every speech she gave, she never mentioned revenge or anger, only forgiveness. She often said, the world broke me once, but it also gave me the strength to rebuild. Kindness is not weakness, it's power. Her story inspired millions. She appeared on television shows, documentaries, and even international conferences. But deep inside, she remained the same girl who once cried under the night sky, praying for an answer. Years later, when her father grew old, Amara cared for him just as he had once cared for her. Every evening, they would sit together in the garden, watching the sunset. One evening, he took her hand and said, you are my greatest success, Amara, not my business, not my wealth, but you. She smiled through tears. And you are my greatest gift. After his passing, Amara stood before thousands at his memorial, her voice steady but filled with emotion. My father once taught me that love sometimes hides behind sacrifice, she said. He sent me away to save me. He lived in pain to protect me. I forgive him, and I thank him, because his love was the kind that never died. The crowd was silent, moved by her words. Years later, as she stood atop the Khan Foundation headquarters, now a global charity, she looked out over the city that had once abandoned her. Her heart was full. She whispered softly, we made it, Father. The wind blew gently, as if carrying his blessing back to her. Moral of the story: no matter how painful life becomes, never assume rejection means the end. Sometimes, it's protection in disguise. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's silent, patient, and hidden behind heartbreak.